breaking, and one of the biggest stories that is making all the headlines in India is with respect to George Soros and the kind of statements now that are coming to light from EAM Jaishankar as well, who has hit back at Soros. He said, and I quote, "Mr. Soros is an old, rich, opinionated person sitting in New York who still thinks that his views should determine how the entire world works. Such people actually invest resources in shaping the narratives." So, of course, now we see how the BJP has been hitting back against George Soros. But, of course, a very important reaction coming to light from the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who has now hit back against George Soros. And he has also spoken about how Mr. Soros has made those statements. And what it really tells them is that Mr. Soros is a rich, opinionated person sitting in New York, and that who still thinks that his views should determine how the entire world works. Let's first up, viewers, listen in to what S. Jaishankar had to say, then we'll get you all the breaking updates.
Said at the Munich conference, essentially Mr. Soros said India is a democratic country, but he doesn't think the Prime Minister of India is a Democrat. By the way, a few years ago, in the same conference, I was there at that time, he actually accused us of planning to strip millions of Muslims of their citizenship, which of course didn't happen. It was a ridiculous suggestion. But you have to understand what this actually means. I could take a view that the individual in question, Mr. Soros, is a old, rich, opinionated person sitting in New York who still thinks that his views should determine how the entire world works. Now, if I could only stop at old, rich and opinionated, I would put it away. But it's old, rich, opinionated and dangerous, because what happens is when such people and such views and such organizations, they actually invest resources in shaping narrative.
So there we have it, viewers. EAM S. Jaishankar, in fact, hitting out against George Soros. Let me also bring in my colleague Niranjan from the Mumbai newsroom. Niranjan, what we see now is S. Jaishankar hitting out against George Soros, almost calling him solipsistic as well, saying that he is an old rich man who thinks that his opinion should shape the entire world, Niranjan.
Well, he's right. That's what George Soros does. Historically, when you look at what George Soros invests in, the countries invest in, the societies he invests in, he's someone who's extremely selfish. He's a financial mercenary. He's a financial mercenary, as Arnab put it yesterday on the debate, and we've been saying here on Republic TV that George Soros is nothing but a financial mercenary who wants to subvert democracy. Wherever he invests, wherever he puts his money, wherever his money goes, and whichever group gets his money, they're all mercenaries, basically. Financial mercenaries. Let's look at what Jaishankar has said. He's called him an old, rich, opinionated person who thinks his views should determine how the world works. Now, across the world, historically, if you look at where Soros has invested or where he's gone in and tried to sort of, bring in regime changes, invest in disinformation campaigns, that's exactly what he's trying to do in India. Look at the Soros gang, as we call them, Priyanka. Look at the Soros gang in India. Look at what they've done. George Soros is someone who's speaking about, I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. He's someone who's speaking about, he's talking about the Adani Hindenburg issue, for example. His ecosystem, which is the ecosystem in which he's invested in media houses, small media groups, he's invested, in them through his Open Society Foundations, and they've invested in media groups that create the narrative for George Soros. Now, similarly, Vadra Congress was also linked to him, who of course, he believes in the Vadra Congress. He sent his people to be with the Vadra Congress. He's met the Vadra Congress over the years. And in the latest picture, you saw that his man who runs the Open Society Foundation, the VP globally for the Open Society Foundation, is marching with Rahul Gandhi. So basically, the Soros gang that comprises the entire ecosystem of Soros takes his money, uses his support, uses his network to build a narrative. What have they done in India over the years? They've tried to use issues like Adani issue, which is the latest issue. If you look at all the big talking points, controversies in India, Priyanka, let's start with CAA. He's had a direct role to play in the CAA because people who built the CAA narrative and instigated riots are associated with George Soros. Harsh Mandar, for example, has had links with Soros or Soros-linked groups. Just look at the CAA. He's been vocal about it. The entire ecosystem, the people who raise these issues are linked to the foundations that funded these media groups, and these are the same media groups that built the CAA narrative. Now let's look at some other issues where Soros has had a direct hand in India. The Rafale issue, he directly had links to it with his groups or groups linked to him or his network that picked up this issue in the first place. The Congress picked it up on cue, and they even went on to, on issues like Pegasus, which was also linked to the George Soros linked groups. His groups were one of the first ones to file a report on Pegasus, and the Vadra Congress used that same issue to amplify the fight against the government here and his ecosystem. So it works on three fronts, like we've been saying here on Republic TV. There is the George Soros linked groups, direct linked groups, and then there is the Vadra Congress, the political groups, and the ecosystem or the media groups and the small websites that are funded by him. There are reports that there are 3 or 4 media groups that played up the Pegasus and the Rafale issues being directly linked or funded through open society here in India. So this is the kind of narrative that he builds. This is exactly what Jaishankar is saying, that Soros is an old, opinionated person who's dangerous. Dangerous because he uses his money to create a disinformation campaign, to build narrative and try to bring down governments across the world. Of course, he can never do that in India, but it just shows you how dangerous this man is and why it's very important to look at his entire ecosystem and investigate that ecosystem.